Welcome to the MCFRS Incident Response Policy. In this video, we're going to cover the background of the research that went into this SOP. Following that, we're going to cover the MCFRS position statement that the committee developed on high-rise fires. This will give you help to see the mindset of the things you can think about as you're making decisions. Basically, a checklist that will help you to evaluate and reevaluate during your emergency. As we continue through the video, we're going to cover the standard operating procedures to give you the framework of your responsibility on the high-rise fire. We're also going to cover the policies that need to be accomplished while performing your task in the SOP. The background this SOP considers is the research into compartment fire behavior, structural component behavior under fire conditions, known changes in the built environment, and the lessons learned from firefighting operations in Montgomery County, Maryland. This will give you the MCFRS approach towards high-rise fire operations. High-rise buildings pose a higher life safety risk for residents and firefighters than a normal non-high-rise residential structure. The higher risk is due to many factors, including but not limited to the following. The vertical orientation of the high-rise provides for rapid smoke travel. The presence of large and varied populations, many of whom find egress difficult. And there's a more complicated floor arrangements in high-rises. There's an increased travel distance for the fire and the variety of protection systems. For example, while all commercial high-rises in Montgomery County are sprinklered, the same is not true in the residential environment. Further, not all high-rises, even those with more modern fire protection, have all the same fire protection features. The high-rise fire is manpower extensive. You will need more firefighters to stretch lines and conduct searches, and more resources must be devoted to controlling smoke travel. Effective control of smoke travel will play a large role in outcomes. Example, in high-rise buildings, the interior exit stairways can be considered a building within itself. The stairwells in these buildings are a safe place. The safety of the stairwells is of utmost importance. All personnel must take care to ensure the continued safety of the stairwell as they conduct their other duties. This is important. While the fire flow requirements for compartmented residential high-rises does not differ greatly from other residential structures, the threat of wind-driven events is much higher for high-rise structures, especially on the upper floors. Wind-driven events add an additional layer of risk and complexity to the high-rise fire. When the wind is pushing a fire through the structure, there's a greater potential for deadly outcomes, and it's dramatically increased. The general approach to high-rise fires is the same as the approach to the other structure fires. However, the high-rise environment presents some unique challenges and requires a slightly different thought process. The ultimate objective of structural fire operations is to provide for the continued survival of people, the occupants, who may be trapped in the structure that is on fire. In order to meet this ultimate objective, MCFRS structural firefighting operations are geared primarily to ensure occupant protection and removal. If you happen to remove an occupant and they are in need of medical care, then that needs to remain the priority during fireground operations. Just keep in mind when you're making the decisions, the occupant's life safety is the priority. The next thing that you're going to focus your operations towards is reducing property loss. The key to reducing property loss and to improve the survivability for occupants is by using the fast water and coordinated ventilation approach. Fast water means that personnel use the fastest, most direct method possible to put water on the fire in order to reduce the amount of heat, smoke, and other products of combustion that the fire is generating. Coordinated ventilation means limiting ventilation until the water is being applied to the fire, thereby limiting the supply of additional oxygen to the fire, which in turn reduces the likelihood of rapid fire growth. What changes is how best to achieve the objectives. In the case of a high-rise fire, smoke control will play a critical role in incident outcomes. Except in rare cases, more people will be threatened by smoke and, by extension, high levels of carbon dioxide, particulates, and other debilitating gases. The fire department cannot control which doors the occupants open into the stairwells prior to their arrival, but they should assume that there are at least a few open. Each door opening increases the likelihood of smoke traveling into the stairwell, which is going to increase risk for both the civilians and the firefighters. For high-rise fires, coordinated ventilation means that crews will limit to the extent possible the creation of openings from the stairwell to the fire floor and from the fire floor to the common corridor. Any opening in the top of the stairwell prior to fire control increases the risk of the stairwell becoming an exhaust for fire spread by completing that flow path. Because of the importance of a smoke-free stairwell, the potential risk to occupants, and the need to avoid creating new flow paths, initial operation for positive pressure fans use will be to pressurize, not ventilate the stairwells. The intent of pressurization is to increase the air pressure in a compartment, such as a stairwell, to prevent the migration or additional migration of smoke into that compartment. The intent of ventilation is to remove smoke from a compartment. Once the fire has been controlled, the priority of ventilation smoke removal is still critical, and the method you choose needs to limit smoke travel. At this point, hydraulic ventilation out of a window is the preferred method. If the hydraulic ventilation approach is not working, then consider using the apartment on the opposite side of the same floor for hydraulic ventilation. Once the fire has been extinguished, begin the use of fans on the fire floor for positive pressure. The last resort in ventilation is using the ventilation stairwell. The intentional creation of an exhaust opening in the stairwell is the ventilation option of last resort. This concludes the video presentation. Now I can look at the next video that is going to cover the SOPs, see what the changes are, and go from there. But before you leave, take a look at the picture that you see and see if you're able to go back, look at all the questions that are in the previous slides, and see how that would relate and how you would use the strategy and tactics for this type of scenario.